Good morning, dear students. I am Bharti Kathuria Saigal from the SD Vidya School. Today we are going to start with another very important topic of the chapter Body Fluids and Circulation. The topic we are going to do today is regulation of cardiac activity. Now, cardiac activity, we have earlier also discussed, most of it is controlled by the SA node and the AV node. The SA node, also called the sinoatrial node, and the AV node, which is the atrioventricular node, actually control the cardiac cycle and the cardiac output. So they maintain the activity of the heart. The conducting system or the regulating system in the heart consists of the SA node, which is the pacemaker, the AV node, which is the pace setter, through which it is transferred to the Purkinje fibers, which along with the right and the left bundles form the bundle of His. The rate the heart conducts the electrical impulses is called the cardiac conduction. The electrical pulses determine the order in which the chambers contract. The heart rate. Now the sinoatrial node, as we were discussing, is located in the upper wall of the right atrium. It is made up of the nodal tissue, which I have already told you are the modified muscles in the heart. They have both the muscles and the nervous tissue. Here, the electrical impulse begins. The atrioventricular node is located between the atria and the ventricles of the heart. It is made up of, again, nodal tissue. The electrical impulse is carried from the SA node and the AV node is stimulated. Now, the atrioventricular bundle branches are located between the atria and the ventricles. As you can see, between the atria and the ventricles are located the atrioventricular bundle branches. The fibers branch into two bundles, the left and the right. The electrical impulse travels from the AV node to the bundle branches after the atria have contracted and emptied. The AV bundle branches then carry the impulse down the center of the heart to the right and the left ventricles. The cardiac conduction system in the heart, as I told you, mainly starts with SA node, which starts the action potential, which is then passed on to the AV node, and from AV node to the bundle of His. Further, it divides into the left and the right bundle branches, which then reaches the Purkinje fibers and then to the ventricular muscles. The cardiac activity is regulated by two mechanisms, intrinsic regulation and extrinsic regulation. So far, we have studied the intrinsic regulation, which is by SA node and AV node and other bundles. Now we are going to start with the extrinsic regulation. Extrinsic regulation occurs by two modes, neural regulation and hormonal regulation. The neural regulation of cardiac activity. For the cardiac activity, the receptors are present in the arteries and in the aorta, which are carried to the cardioregulatory center in the medulla oblongata by the sensory nerve fibers. The sympathetic nerve fibers and the parasympathetic nerve fibers are involved in carrying of these messages from the heart to regulate the activity of heart. Now let's discuss about these sympathetic and parasympathetic mechanisms. The sympathetic and parasympathetic mechanisms are the part of the autonomic nervous system. The nervous system generally is categorized into the autonomic. Autonomic stands for which is not controlled by our own will. So जो हम control नहीं कर सकते हैं, that is called as the autonomic. और जिसे हम control कर सकते हैं, that is called as the somatic. So autonomic nervous system दो तरीके से operate करता है. sympathetic and parasympathetic. These are generally opposite, antonyms of each other. So they act antagonistic. Antagonistic means opposite act karte hain. Now, in the cardiac activity, the sympathetic helps in increasing the heart rate, while parasympathetic decreases the heart rate. Sympathetic increases the ventricular contraction, while parasympathetic decreases the speed of conduction of action potential. Sympathetic increases the cardiac output, while parasympathetic decreases the cardiac output. So that's about the neural control and coordination of the cardiac activity. Now, heart, in addition to being controlled by the modes that we discussed, sympathetic and parasympathetic, are also controlled by the hormones released by the adrenal gland called the adrenaline or the epinephrine, which also helps in increasing the heart rate. So adrenaline, which is also called as the triple F hormone. So you remember triple F stands for fight, flight and fright. So डर जाते हैं या दौड़ रहे हैं किसी सिचुएशन से या हम फाइट कर रहे हैं, तीनों सिचुएशंस में हार्ट की एक्टिविटी को बढ़ा देता है the release of adrenaline or epinephrine by the adrenal gland called as the suprarenal gland, as it is located above the kidneys. That's all for this topic. Stay home, stay safe, all of you. God bless you. Thank you.